Hey there, Money Heroes. It's Stephanie, your host and fellow explorer on the Be Your Money Hero podcast. We're diving into the nitty-gritty of personal finance and having real conversations about how money, spirituality, psychology, and our life stories all dance together. This podcast is educational, but I'm not a therapist, and my guests and I cannot offer personalized advice through a podcast. My goal is to create a safe place for you to learn and get curious about yourself and expand the way you've thought about money. So if you're ready, let's dive in. Carrie Green is a small-town girl from Alabama who chased her dreams to live in the big city. But what she found wasn't the glittering skyscrapers from the movies, but hurdles, poverty, and heartache. Scraping herself up from homelessness, Carrie has finally settled in Colorado Springs and began building a life on her own terms. So here we are today with over 20 years in sales, advertising, and marketing. Carrie has always known she's wanted to improve lives and help people by working in nonprofits. After crafting award-winning nonprofit campaigns for veterans and seniors, she's recently ventured into freelance work to help more nonprofits and small businesses tell their stories, and more recently joined forces with friends to create marketing that will bring harm reduction education and supplies to the masses by way of anonymous kiosks. Though she has a full-time job at the local nonprofit, Rocky Mountain PACE, she has always hoped that she could use her experiences in life and in marketing to help people become their best selves and tell their own stories. This episode is going to give you tools and resources you need to update or create your resume so that you can confidently move towards your next career move. Carrie, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Will you give us a little bit more of an introduction into yourself and how you came into the space?
Sure. So I have always had a passion for writing and storytelling and things like that, and fell into marketing. I spent some time doing marketing for larger companies, but felt something was missing, and I always wanted to work in nonprofits. So I love being able to craft stories for nonprofits and for people and things like that so that they can, improve lives. Just love it. Sorry. Resumes I think are a good way to help people craft their stories, and creating that personal brand is another way that you can tell your story and stuff. And there's so many ways, more than just marketing and advertising and creating your brand. You can tell your story in so many ways, and I think resumes are a great place to start with that. For sure.
So if we have a resume who is putting together one for the first time, where do you even start?
I think it's a good idea to go ahead and write down everything about yourself and divide it into categories. You can start with, hobbies, things you did in high school, if you were in any sports, if you played any music, if you were in any clubs, things like that can help you create a story for yourself for a resume. Even if you don't have a lot to put on there, it is at least a good starting place. It shows that you have dedication, experience working with the team, things like that. And then have some kind of content. If nothing else, you can use your education, even high school, as your career history. Make it robust, though, and brag on yourself a little bit.
That can be difficult for some people. And so what's a good way to brag on yourself? Can you use AI to help you do that?
Yeah, I think you can. Number one, be honest. But if you have, won any awards, even if it was in high school, say we're a team captain of some sort. That's a way you can brag on yourself because that shows leadership skills. Or, you had a scholarship, or you won a writing contest or an art contest. Those are just really fun ways that you can incorporate that and talk yourself up. And I do like using AI to help craft your resume. I think it's a good way to beat recruiters at their own game, because recruiters use AI to look at resumes too. So then you can ask AI, hey, what are some good keywords? What's a good introduction for somebody with this experience? Or, I don't really have a job history, but here's what I did in high school. Can you help me create a resume introduction? And AI is really good at that. So yeah, use it to your advantage.
So when you and I have talked a little bit more in the past, you've mentioned a personal brand. What exactly is a personal brand? What's that mean?
So a personal brand is how people think and feel about you after you've left a room, right? So that is going to be creating how you want people to see you, how you want them to remember you. So that could be things like, I want to be remembered as being really kind and really upbeat. So you work that into everything you do. You work that into your resume. You work that into the way that you write emails or connect with people. And some of the personal brand is subconscious. Some of it is out of our control. What people think about you. Can't always control that. But there are things that you can do to help push a brand, right? So if you want to be kind, speak with kindness. If you want to be seen as being an expert, speak to peers in a way that they like being spoken to, or the way that they speak with you. And a lot of things you can do are mirror things that other people do in conversation, because that gives them a sense of familiarity. So a brand is just, how you want people to feel about you. And it's important to do that, especially in resumes. You can convey a lot about yourself and the way that you interact, in the way that you type your resume, and the words that you use, and things like that.
So could you give me an example? So what would you feel like your personal brand is? And how would what are some of the words that you would use if you were putting together a resume?
I want my personal brand to be seen as being expert, but also being kind and approachable. I really want to be open with people. So I use things like I helped, or assisted, or I use feeling words in my resume. I put in my resume that my coworkers found me easy to work with and kind, and ready to help if they ever had a problem. If I were trying to be seen as an expert and, wanted to be hired for like a STEM job or something, I might put that I created data research, or I would speak more about things that I've accomplished technically than things that I've accomplished creatively, or something like that.
So I know that in the past, sometimes I've utilized cover letters too for specific jobs that I had an interest in, particularly if there was a mission or something in the about section, because we can submit resumes all day long. If you're on unemployment, you're required, I think, to do 5 a week or 15. I don't remember what that number is, but I know that there's a quota you have to meet if you're on unemployment. And when you're just firing off those resumes, it is not as efficient, at least from my own experience. And so when I have looked for other jobs in the past, I will look at the job listings, I'll look at the company, and really try to determine what if I would want to work for that company, and then why. So is there something behind the mission that speaks to you? And then putting together that cover letter that addresses those things, and then how my experience and my story would translate to what they're looking for. Do you have specific tips that can be used when submitting a resume, or what type of format, if it's an email or a cover letter? What are some best practices in that?
Yeah, so I recommend everybody make at least 2 resumes. So your first resume is going to be your eye-catching, like this is going to be for an in-person interview, right? And that's going to have, depending on the type of job that you're doing, if you're doing something creative or something where you're going to have a face-to-face interaction with clients or something, I recommend putting a headshot there. And spiff it up. I have a link on my website that I'm going to provide to viewers with some resources about resume writing. And one of them is a link to different resume formats that are free on Canva that you can personalize. Some of them look very eye-catching, but still, simple and plain. So use those to your advantage. Bring that to your in-person interview. Another resume type that you will want to have is just a text-only one, for if you're applying to something where you have to upload text, or something like Indeed, where it won't matter if you have, a pretty resume, because they're not going to see that, right? So have that type of resume. And I like to use keywords that they have put in the job description. and echo those either in my cover letter or in my resume, to kind of call back to what they're looking for, right? It takes about 5 minutes. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. Just read through it, copy some of the keywords, put those in your cover letter, put those in your resume, and it will be more likely to be stand out when it is time for people to look through resumes.
I've been on the other side of the position too, where I have helped management sort through different resumes for a position. And that's definitely something that can help a person stand out, is if they have done their research, and you can tell that they're not just, you can tell a difference. When you are an employer looking at resumes, you can tell who's just submitting resumes, not really looking at the job posting, and who has done their research. And it can really help you stand out from the crowd, especially in a more competitive environment. But when it comes to those pretty resumes, one debate that I've seen on social media is, do you use a headshot or no headshot?
I think that it depends on the type of job you're applying to, right? So again, those creative jobs in, design or graphic design or something like that, or ones where you're going to be in a more creative, happy, friendly, face-to-face, customer-oriented field. I think it is helpful to have a headshot in that. It's not necessary. But if you're applying to something more technical, maybe in STEM, headshots are usually frowned upon for those. Some professional jobs don't want to see it. They want you to kind of stand on your experience and stuff. So a tip that I like to tell people is look at other resumes of people who hold the job that you're applying to, and see what their resumes look like. If you see headshots being a recurring theme, maybe have one. If you don't see any, maybe take it out.
The other thing is, I would imagine that maybe not all employers, but a lot of them will check to see if you're on LinkedIn or social media. Are there certain considerations that people should take into account before submitting their resumes by, putting certain privacy things in place or anything along those lines when it comes to social media?
I definitely think that you should tighten down your social media. Just because if an employer is looking at you versus another person, and they, more commonly nowadays will look up your social media and they see, maybe to you it looks like a family get together, but to somebody else they may see, alcohol or something like that in the picture, or it looks like a party, but they see somebody else's social media and it's all, professional or, outdoor pictures or something like that, and it's very calm and subdued. That could influence their decision. And obviously we don't want to think that people would care, but they do. So I do recommend, locking down your personal social media if you can, but LinkedIn is a good place to let yourself shine. Beef that up, reach out to coworkers. If you can have people endorse you for skills that you've done in the past, things like that, that can always help. Make your LinkedIn robust and pretty. And that is one place on social media where I think everybody should have a presence and everybody should interact. But your Instagram or your Twitter or something like that, if you've, maybe said something not so nice 10 years ago or something, an employer might find that. So lock that down if you can.
I think that it would come back to, especially on LinkedIn, to be cognizant of what your personal brand is and to make sure that those two things match. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So part of your personal brand is that's something that you're always projecting, right? So that's going to be on your LinkedIn. You can make your personal brand just natural to you so that you're always projecting that. And that will come through on your LinkedIn, I think, too. But it's always helpful to use those words that influence how people feel about you. And you can have that in, the way that you comment to your coworkers and things like that, or comments you make on people's posts, and the way that you cultivate your online presence. You can definitely put a lot of your personal brand into that.
So if we switch gears a little bit, maybe we've had a listener that's been a stay-at-home parent for a while, or there's been maybe a health challenge and there's been a break in their work history for a longer period of time. What's a good way to address that?
I think you're still working, even if you're not working for an employer, right? And I put quotes around working because, if you're a stay-at-home mom, you're doing things like organizing schedules. If you're grocery shopping, you have experience in budgeting and maintaining inventory. If you have had an experience where you're, sick for a while or something like that, you have experience maintaining schedules and showing up to appointments on time and taking your medications on time. So everything you do, I think, can be distilled down into some type of history you can put on a resume. If you have children, you're raising kids, you were responsible for education and scheduling for them as well. I think there's always something that you can do on your resume that reflects these periods where you might not have had a formal employer. Household management it shows a lot of discipline, and I think you should never discount that.
So how do you actually list that on a resume then?
You can definitely put, that you were a household manager and you were in charge of budgeting, scheduling, education. With scheduling and structured activities geared at learning, you were responsible for finding learning activities for your children. And, that's important too. So I think everything that you do can be helpful. And there's a lot of resources out there for homemakers to reflect what they have done, or people who have had a break in their resume online. There's a lot of resources to help you distill things that you might have done into work history that you can put on there.
I know that there's even, I'm linking on the name, but I could put the link in the show notes where it's almost like an Indeed, but it's for mothers specifically. And so I think that if you find certain groups that are more sensitive to that as well, because a lot of us have, been parents or have tried the work juggle while raising a family and things like that. So I think that if you are able to find people who are more open to the experience that you've had as a parent, that can be helpful as well.
Yeah, and I have seen a lot of customer service jobs really like having mothers and things like that for their entry-level positions, because mothers have patience, right? And sometimes you need a lot of that. So it can actually help on your resume too.
Well, I know that if you are able to calm a screaming 4-year-old tantrum down because they haven't gotten a peanut butter and jelly with the crust cut off in cut a certain way, then maybe helping a customer who's upset it gives you a certain skill.
I think so.
So are there certain types of people or certain professions where getting professional help with their resume, whether it's reviewed or like a rebuff by someone who has experience in that, are there certain types of people or professions that benefit from having that service?
I definitely think so. So if you are applying to a highly competitive field, even if it's entry level, sometimes the applicant pool can just be vast. We're talking 10, 15,000 applications for a single job posting now, especially as things go remote. Instead of just having one city as a pool for applications, we have the whole world sometimes now. So if you are applying to a highly competitive field, I definitely recommend having somebody with experience writing resumes for that field. Giving them a chance to redo your resume could give you a leg up. Also, if you're looking for, management, or looking to step up into a new role as a director or maybe a CEO or a C-suite, something like that, having a professional resume writer look at your resume is definitely helpful there too, especially as you move up within, your field. It's never a bad thing to have somebody just give it a second look. Even if you think your resume is great, there are always things changing about how application review systems, look at resumes and stuff, and staying abreast of that, paying somebody who is familiar with those can definitely give you a big leg up in those situations.
Will you actually tell us a little bit more about what those resume processing systems look like? What are they looking for? How do we use that to our advantage? Because that's something that's relatively new to me. And so I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So A lot of larger organizations are trying to simplify the application process, especially as we're getting, these large pools of applicants. They're called ATS, applicant tracking systems. And basically what happens is an HR department or somebody looking to hire for a role will put in the experience they're looking for. They will put in keywords that they're looking for, maybe certain key job functions that they want an applicant to have, and they will preload that into a system. And then what happens is as you apply, it starts going through your resume and looking for those keywords. And if you don't have enough of them, or you don't have them, in the right order, or have any of them at all, it will just discard your application to something that has to be manually reviewed, right? That's not to say that your application won't be reviewed, but it won't be kind of put to the front of the line. So I like to use AI and look at other applications and other resumes of people already in the field to see what they have on their resume that I don't, to see what I'm missing to fill in some of those gaps. And again, having a professional resume writer or someone familiar with AI, or if you want to learn AI, just figuring out what questions to ask it to help find those keywords that you might not even know that you need, that can help. And again, another way to get past the ATS systems is to just read the job description and make sure that the keywords that they have in that job description are reflected in your resume and your cover letter. But it's easier for the person looking to hire to kind of filter out resumes and look at only the ones that are going to be highly qualified, rather than being forced to look through thousands and thousands of resumes hoping to find a needle in a haystack.
That makes total sense. Are there specific AI tools that you prefer or that you like to use?
Yeah, I actually like one called Claude, Claude, and it's Claude.ai. And this one has a more advanced language modeling system. So the information it generates is going to be more human-like. It's going to be more accurate, and it's going to have a larger base of information that it has reviewed before spitting out the information that it gives. So I really like Claude, especially for resumes and things like that. One thing I do caution people about is to never just copy and paste what AI tells you. Always look it over, read it, make sure the grammar is correct, and rewrite it. Rewrite it in your personal brand. This is a place where you can, take those words and keywords that you want people to feel about you and inject that into what AI gives you. So always rewrite anything that anything that you use AI to generate.
I think that one of the really important reasons to not skip that step is because AI is advancing at crazy rates. And with as quickly as AI is developing, there are also other tools that are detecting what has been generated by AI. So if you're using AI, for example, blog posts or things like that, and you're not heavily editing it, Google's not going to show it in their search history as much and things like that. And so rewording things into your own verbiage and changing it to fit you is important for that reason, because as this AI continues to develop, they're going to be able to detect what was written up by a computer or an AI versus an actual human. So that's why it's important to use AI as a base. And I found that it's really helpful to get like my creative juices flowing, because sometimes when we sit down to review something or create something, we have that writer's block. But if we have AI to help get that going and give us ideas, then we can run with it.
Yeah, I think it can get you 50% of the way there or more. But definitely don't just copy paste. It can get you in more trouble than if you hadn't used it at all.
Are there any other tips that you have for job seekers?
Yeah, and I think I'm just going to echo something that I had said earlier, which is reach out to people in the field that you want to work in. Look at their LinkedIn, look at their resume, see what they're doing, what they have on their resume, and see what you can add either in your personal life for, professional development, things that you can do that they have done that have helped them. Reach out, start conversations with people on LinkedIn who have the jobs that you want to get. Ask them what was successful for them. Join networking groups. You can join Facebook groups of people who are in the field that you want to work in. And, see how they talk, see what type of jobs they're doing, what type of education they're getting. Use people who are already successful and model what they're doing. I think that's one of the best things that you can do.
Perfect. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you guys know that on my website, I have put together just a little one sheet with some tips about applying for resumes. I have a section for, homemakers, how to build a resume off of your experience with that. I have tips for using AI to help build your resume. And it's going to be on www.egmarketing.co. And it's going to be under Hire Me on my tab there. Or I gave the link to Stephanie as well, so she can link it in the program description. And it's free. Download it, use it, and feel free to reach out to me if there's, any questions that you might have that I could help you with in the meantime.
Perfect. And we'll make sure that we have links to all of that down in the show notes here. Carrie, I was wondering if we could switch gears a little bit. Would you be willing to share a little bit more about your story? I'm so intrigued about how you went from a small town girl in Alabama to ending up here and what brought you here. Is that something you'd be willing to share?
Sure. So again, I grew up in a small town. It's called Phoenix City, Alabama. And growing up, my mom always told me and my siblings, you're going to get out of here. Like, if you stay here, you're not going to, make anything of yourself. So I really want you to go to college and just get out of here. Right. So that's what I did. I thought, hey, I'm going to go to the big city. I'm going to go to college. But it wasn't that easy for me. I got into a marriage. Like a lot of people, it wasn't the best one. Things happened. We ended up living in people's garages and just making poor decisions based on poverty at the time. Some things happened, life happened. And my mom finally sat me down and she was like, when I said get out of Alabama, I meant do it the right way. So here's what you need to do. So, had to work on learning how to be an adult. And I went back to college, started, working in customer service and sales, being a store manager at a shoe store. I moved around a lot. I started in Jacksonville, Florida. I went to San Diego, Dallas, Austin. And then I was working in tech, decided it's really hard to be a woman in tech. And I just wanted a fresh start. So about 5 years ago now, I came here to Colorado Springs to just kind of start fresh and make life what I wanted it to be. So I concentrated on volunteering and getting my foot in the door at nonprofits. And I knew that it was important to me that I use marketing to help people. I was tired of, using marketing to sell things, So just 5 years ago, decided I wanted to live life for me, wanted to be happy, didn't want to chase money anymore. And I might not have all of the fun, expensive houses and, nice cars that I used to have when I was working in tech, but I'm so much happier now. I found, Colorado Springs is just a happy place to be. It's beautiful. Everywhere you go, there's vistas. I love it here. I love working in the nonprofit community here, making those connections that help people. So everybody has a story of how they got where they are. And I'm just glad mine ended up here in such a happy place.
Well, I'm glad that our paths crossed. And were there certain things that had stood in your way from, what was your childhood like growing up in Alabama? Was it more scarce? Was it kind of middle class? What did that look like?
So we were poor, but my mom worked very hard to make sure that we didn't know that we, didn't have. And I didn't, a lot of things that we did, I didn't know weren't normal because my mom just did her best to make sure that we felt as good as anybody else, right? She didn't want us to feel poor. She didn't want us to feel like we were less than somebody else. We were quite poor. I would have to go over to friends' houses and try on their clothes, and whatever they gave me would be, my school uniform for the next year. We would post date checks for groceries. We would eat pimento cheese sandwiches for weeks because that was on sale, but I didn't know that we were poor because my mom just did such a good job of enriching our lives in other ways. So I'm so grateful for that. And, we were without, but my mom has also worked her entire life. She's worked really hard. They're doing very well now. They have a ranch in Florida and a beach house, and they're just enjoying the heck out of life. I love that for her. Maybe I'll be there one day. And it's just, she's worked so hard her whole life. So very grateful for that.
Do you think that there were certain things that you had to overcome when you were, living in someone's garage to going in tech, and like that's a pretty big swing, right? Because a lot of times when we're in one situation, we almost have the pendulum almost has to swing to the other side before we find our happy place for ourselves. What did that look like for you?
For me, it was I let a bad relationship draw me into a bad place. And I hate that it's common, but it really is. You think I'm going to stick through thick and thin with this person, and thin becomes thinner and there's no thick, right? So I had to remove myself from that situation and from that person to see that they weren't a good influence on me. And I had to be my own inspiration. I didn't have friends that I could lean on anymore. I didn't have, those strong family relationships anymore. I let the relationship that I was in affect my personal relationship with my family. So, and my family isn't the type to, come home and we'll take care of you. They will, they want you to do good for yourself. They want you to learn on your own. And I really had to do that. I left this person. I lived in my car for a while. Then I had roommates. I went back to college. I worked at that shoe store during the day and went to college at night online. And, I had to start at the bottom. I was working at a fast food place for a bit. And I just kept every day. I wanted to be better than the day before, and just little steps here and there. The little steps add up so much. I can't imagine if you had asked me, when I was 28, if I would be where I am at now. I could never have told you that. And it was just little steps. They were almost not noticeable. I didn't know that every little step would add up so much. So even on days, I think, when I felt hopeless, I still did something that day to improve myself, to make each day better. I ended up in tech because I was an e-commerce manager. I started out just taking pictures of manufacturing equipment, worked my way up to putting those pictures on the website, worked my way up to creating descriptions for the website, mailing those things out. Then I was managing the web page, the web presence. I built a store for them on the web. And this was just all self-taught. Again, just trying to do better than the day before, and ended up managing a lot of money going in and out for this semiconductor manufacturing company in Austin. And it just, again, I started taking pictures of manufacturing products. It's crazy. And I think anybody can do it. You just have to take a good look at yourself, where you're at, be honest with yourself, be honest about what got you to the situation that you were in. For me, a lot of it was being honest with myself that I had a lot to do with how I got in that situation, and I had a lot to do to get out of it. I think that helped me a lot too.
Thank you for sharing that, because there's so many people that I talk to, and I have a story that's somewhat similar, right? Like, because I had ended up homeless, basically. I was lucky to be able to live with some friends for a while. And often go into these relationships because we get starstruck or we fall in love, and love, it really truly is blind. We don't see it. And so I think that we come into relationships and our karma becomes intermingled, because you can't separate the decisions that you are making for yourself and then the decisions that your partner is making for themselves, because those decisions have an effect on the other. And when one person is wanting to make themselves better in what other way, and maybe the other person isn't interested in that, even if it's, whether it's coasting or they want somebody else to take care of them. Because for me, I was the caretaker, and I felt like it was my job to take care of my partner and to give them everything that they wanted. And it didn't matter hell or high water, like I was going to be with this person for the rest of my life. But words and actions from my partner were different, because the words were, we're going to stick this out, I'll do anything, but the actions didn't follow that up. The actions were self-sabotaging. It was not wanting to necessarily get better. Like they would say that they would, but there wasn't any action behind that to prove, you got to put your money where your mouth is to some extent. And it was really hard for me to take a look at my relationship, and especially at towards the end, when it was coming to the end, and realizing that I had a lot to do with the way that the relationship was going. I had a lot to do with it.
I think that was the hardest realization for me, is for a little bit, I played the blame game and was, towards the end of the relationship, well, he did this and he did this. Yeah, but what did I do? I didn't stop him. I didn't make myself better. I didn't speak up when I should have. There were things that I could have done that I didn't. And realizing that I am the one who had a lot to do with my situation too. So as soon as I realized that I got myself here too, I'm the only one who can help myself get out. Not everybody is in that situation. Some people are lucky enough to have, people that can help them realize that or help them out of the situation. But sometimes we are our only resource. But yeah, I was very much in the same situation. I was in love with this man and we were going to make it. The only place we were making it was with nothing, in a garage.
And I think that it's a delicate balance too, because I noticed that I was blaming and making excuses for the situation that we were in. And there was this, so we had this cherry red hearse is what I called it. It was a cherry red Chevy HHR, and this car was always breaking down. It made me crazy. And then I had two little kids, like my two older ones were very small at the time. I think they were like, 8 months and like 2 years old, like very young. And so I had to go pick up another piece for this car after work, and they were hangry and crying and grouchy. And then I was super frustrated. And so on the way to the car, you know how you mumble to yourself sometimes, like when you're mad and you're just like grumbling to yourself. And I was like, I can't go make more money or get another job because he won't watch the kids. And then I realized in that moment what I was doing. I was saying that I can't, but the real word I should have been using is I won't, because I could go get another job, but I was walking on eggshells and I didn't want to rock the boat. And so the real word was I won't, because of those reasons. And so in that moment, I decided that I would use the real words for myself. I wasn't going to lie to myself anymore. And it's like you were talking about, it was just one small step that I didn't even realize the significance at the time, that had a major impact as I continued to build and grow on those things. And so it is just taking that one small step and doing the best you have with what you can in that moment. And then when you know better, do better. And it's not always going to be a straight shot up. You're going to have up and down days, but it's doing the best with what you have.
Yes. And I think you touched on something too, walking on eggshells all of the time. Sometimes when you're in these relationships or you're in these situations, whether it's a bad employer or a bad relationship with a friend or a loved one, you're walking on eggshells, and that is so exhausting. And you don't realize how much mental space that takes up. And it's easy to get exhausted and bogged down by that too. And letting your whole personality become, don't make waves, don't upset this person. And I think once you're past that, it's so freeing. You don't realize how much mental space and how much exhaustion was taken up by the situation.
Because that stress becomes normal. We live with it every day. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're pinching pennies and trying to figure out how we're going to rob Peter to pay Paul and just make it until the next payday. And then when we start putting those boundaries in place and we start making ourselves just a little bit better every day, and we start learning more and investing in ourselves, like all of that has such a huge compound effect that you look back and you're like, oh my gosh. And when you do have those boundaries and it comes a point where that person has because for me, that relationship taught me how to love myself, because that relationship was what led me out of, the cult that I was in. It taught me and is teaching me how to forgive. Like, there is such an ongoing process of learning how to love myself. The relationships that we go into often teach us something, reveal something to us that we need. And so some relationships are for a moment, some relationships are for a period, and some of them are for a lifetime. But those are very few and far between. But when it comes time where that relationship has served its purpose and it's time for us to move on, and we are able to take away what we've learned from it, it's so freeing on the other side.
It is. And you don't realize, again, it's just living in poverty is so stressful. You get used to the adrenaline all of the time. I always had adrenaline. I always had this knot in my chest, and it just became normal. And I didn't realize until maybe 5 years later, I don't have that knot in my chest anymore. And a lot of it was learning to love myself and learning that I have worth. My worth isn't tied to a person. My worth isn't being a caretaker and helping somebody. My worth is helping myself.
And by helping yourself, now you can help so many other people.
Yes, I feel like it's given me the space to, love on other people. Loving myself first allows me to put more love into the world. And I think that's a pivotal point for a lot of people, is that learning to love themselves part. And learning to love yourself is more than just self-love. It is wanting to do good for yourself, wanting to take little steps to make yourself better.
And that it's not selfish. Like, that was one of the biggest things that I had to learn, was learning to love myself was not a selfish thing to do. That I was able to make more of an impact and love other people more fully if I could get to a place where I could actually just love me.
I think there's a lot of truth to it. I love that.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so glad that we were able to talk about resumes and all of these types of things. And thank you for being brave and stepping out, because it's one of the scariest things to do.
It is. And you feel like you can't do it. So if anyone else, feels like that, just know that we're on the other side and we're here to help you.
It's absolutely worth it.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me on. I am grateful for you sharing your story as well. I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you.
Of course. So I've got two real quick questions for you that I close every episode out with. What does abundance mean to you?
To me, abundance is what I can give to other people now. Abundance is, right now I work with seniors. Abundance to me is looking at somebody who, came into our program and didn't walk, and 8 months later, and they're walking and they're happy and they just are so full of life again. Watching other people happy is abundance to me.
And what is some of the best advice you've ever received?
You echoed it earlier. You said it earlier. When you know better, do better. And believe in yourself, because you're worth it. But yes, when you know better, it's easy to not know better. But as soon as you know better, it's easy to just make little steps to do better. I fully believe that.
I absolutely do too, because, when we start off with where we are, we can't start off where we're going to be in 10 years. We have to start at where we're at now. And there are stepping stones along the path and stairs that lead us higher. And so that's one of my favorite quotes, is we have the ability to grow. We have the ability to change our minds on issues as we learn more about them. So I love that one. Thank you so much for being here, Carrie. I'm excited to get this out for everybody to hear.
I am too. And again, all of those resources are available to you. You can download them. And again, reach out if there's anything that I can do to help.
I loved all of that information that you put together. I can tell that you put such a lot of hard work and thought into those resources. I really appreciate you doing that for us, Carrie.
I am happy to. Thank you again so much.
As we wrap up this episode of Be Your Money Hero, remember that your financial journey is a path of self-discovery. If you have questions that you would like answered on the show, please submit them to info@beyourmoneyhero.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, share your thoughts and insights with our growing community. Subscribe for more empowering discussions. And always remember, you have the power to be your money hero. Until next time, keep growing, money heroes.